New Zealand has become one of the first major countries to get a firm grip on this pandemic. After Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced that New Zealand has won the war against virus transmission, New Zealanders were seen queuing up for burgers, fries and coffee takeaways as the country eases lockdown restrictions. Long lines of cars were seen outside food joints as over 4 lakh people returned to work. This comes as New Zealand allowed residents to spend more time outside as the country Prime Minister Ardern announced that New Zealand has been able to contain COVID-19 spread but cautioned that the country is in an ongoing fight against COVID-19.
With more people going back to work today, we need to be even more vigilant at level 3 to prevent any inadvertent spreading of the virus. We must continue to stay home where possible, including for work and education. Please stay regional and limit non-essential travel. And even though you can expand your bubble, keep it as small as possible and exclusive.
Meanwhile, business owners hail the government's decision to gradually lift the lockdown. New Zealand has little over 1,400 coronavirus cases and just 19 deaths.
Every day that there's $0 going into the bank account, imagine, but it's nice to see our customers again, even if it is through a Perspex screen.
I have got some of the orders online. As I mentioned, it was through the app and through online Facebook pages we have. Also on the Google, wherever we advertised, we have.
China's lack of urgency in addressing the coronavirus outbreak has been disastrous. A set of secret government documents now reveal how China's delayed reaction in the initial phase of the outbreak placed millions of lives at risk. Top Chinese officials delayed warning the public for 6 days, a delay of 6 days at a time when each hour, each day is crucial. Beijing knew people had started crisscrossing the country ahead of the Chinese Lunar New Year. They had to be warned, but President Xi Jinping maintained a week of public silence. Finally, on the 20th of January, he sent out a public warning about a deadly virus. But it was too late. By then, nearly 3,000 people were infected but remained undetected. China had several opportunities to inform the public about the virus, but top officials in Beijing got to work only after the first case of the coronavirus was detected outside China. On the 13th of January, Thailand reported its first case of COVID-19. On the 14th of January, the head of China's National Health Commission laid out his grim assessment of the situation in a teleconference with the provincial health officials. Let's tell you what his memo said. I'm quoting from his memo now. The epidemic situation is still severe and complex. It is the most severe challenge since SARS in 2003, and it is likely to develop into a major public health event. It was only after this conference that China initiated its emergency response to the virus outbreak. On the 15th of January, Beijing put the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to work. National Health Commission distributed a 63-page set of instructions to the provincial health officials. The plan was to identify, isolate, test and treat all the cases of the new coronavirus nationwide. But officials were strictly instructed to not share anything on the internet. Despite National Health Commission's warning, Beijing did not inform its citizens. With just 41 cases recorded at that time, officials downplayed the threat. On the 15th of January, Li Kun, the head of China's emergency response, remained adamant that the risk of human-to-human transmission was low. Beijing had sent 2 expert teams to Wuhan since the first cases of the flu were detected in late December. It was called a mysterious illness at that point. Both the teams ruled out human-to-human transmission. Just a week later, on the 16th of January, the leader of the second team fell ill due to the virus soon after returning to Beijing. Even then, China chose to delay the issuing of a public warning. By the 19th of January, over 130 people were officially ill due to the virus. Cases began to surface across the country. Shenzhen recorded its first case on the 19th of January. Finally, on the 20th of January, China's President Xi Jinping issued his first public statements on the outbreak, asking people to take it seriously. This early story of the pandemic shows how China missed crucial opportunities. Blame it on China's efforts to keep the outbreak a secret or local officials underreporting the cases due to fear of reprisal. It does not matter. China should have acted quickly. That's clear. An early lockdown of Wuhan could have saved lives, and the world would have been spared the kind of misery not seen since the Second World War. China has been using the coronavirus crisis to invade territories in the South China Sea. And this gross violation of international law comes as the world continues to reel under the pandemic. And now U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has condemned this move, saying that democratic nations should push back. In an interview, the U.S. Secretary of State mentioned that China has become even more aggressive during this crisis. I'm quoting now from his statement. These authoritarian regimes are the kinds of regimes that hope to benefit in times of crisis. In this case, a crisis that emanated from one of their countries. The free world, the democratic nations of the world need to work together to push back against this. China has established two new administrative districts in South China Sea called Xisha and Nansha. These are the Chinese names for the Paracel and Spratly Islands, which are both disputed territories in the South China Sea. 5 countries besides China stake claims on them, including the Philippines, Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia and Taiwan. China's aggressive expansionism does not just end here. Earlier this month, Beijing renamed 25 islands and reefs and 55 undersea entities, all in the disputed South China Sea. The Philippines has also condemned this move by China, calling it flagrant violation of international law. This is not the only bone of contention between the two nations, though. The World Health Organization finds itself in the middle of a war of words between the US and China. This conflict is pushing the world towards a state of paralysis. Reports indicate that the G20 leaders were scheduled to attend a video conference on Friday, but the meeting was scrapped at the very last minute. The US wants to hold the WHO accountable for alleged lapses during the first phase of the outbreak, but China is against any sort of investigation into the global health body's practices. Italy is now on the path to recovery. For the first time, the country has seen the number of COVID-19 recoveries overtake the number of fresh cases. The number of fresh cases in the country fell below the number of newly recovered patients. Let's break down the numbers for you. Italy's Civil Protection Agency reported 3,033 recoveries on Thursday, which is nearly 400 more than the number of new patients. The milestone comes as Italy prepares to begin easing restrictions from next month under a gradual lockdown exit strategy. Figures from the civil protection authorities showed there were 2,646 new cases for the 24-hour period, and the number of recovered patients was 3,033. New cases also saw a significant decline on Thursday, dropping to 2,646, which was 724 less than the figures on Wednesday, which saw 3,370 new cases. The country also reported that more than 1 million people have now been tested for the disease, and 18% of them have tested positive. Italy was the original European epicenter of the outbreak. It registered 464 deaths linked to the virus on Thursday, compared with 437 the day before. The pace of the outbreak in the country has shown signs of slowing down in recent weeks. According to figures from Italy's health ministry, the daily death toll has mostly been on the decline since around the 14th of April, while the number of new cases came down around 16th to 20th April. From the 4th of May, the manufacturing, auto, fashion and design sectors, along with many others including construction, will reopen, but only if they put in place social distancing and protection measures. From mid-May, stores and shopping centers will be able to reopen across Italy, but restaurants, bars, cinemas and theatres will remain closed for a longer period due to the difficulty of maintaining social distancing measures in such venues. Schools will also not reopen for several months. And as we wait for the Italian government to make an official announcement about the next stage when it comes to the easing of lockdown measures, here's a report by a prominent Italian newspaper suggesting what all might change in the month of May. It comes as deaths from COVID-19 in Italy climbed by 420 on Friday, thankfully the smallest daily tally since the 19th of March. Italy has been under a nationwide lockdown since the 9th of March. Longer than any other European country. There have also been psychological impacts on people, with so many people in Italy affected by a sudden and tragic loss of life. What started as a health emergency is now morphing into a psychological crisis. And that's why the country plans a gradual reopening, which will be accompanied by strict hygiene measures and continued social distancing. Bars and restaurants will have to maintain a distance of 1 meter between customers, who will preferably not be seated in air-conditioned spaces. Italy's infection rate and death rate have both fallen from their peaks in late March, when health officials were regularly recording more than 700 deaths per day. Italy says it has carried out more than 1 million tests, and some regions have started testing for signs of immunity. Officials have spoken of a phase 2, in which Italy learns to live with the virus until a vaccine or effective treatment is developed. For the first time, people would be able to carry out coronavirus tests at their residences. American Food and Drug Association has granted emergency clearance for the rollout of an at-home self-test for the virus. The self-test kits are being manufactured by a company called LabCorp. The tests would first be made available to frontline medical workers and first responders who may have been exposed to the disease. After that, the kits will be manufactured for use by the general public. U.S. President Donald Trump himself promoted the rollout of these at-home test kits.
Some interesting note is that the FDA approved the first at-home COVID-19 test kit. Just got approved, and Dr. Stephen, where is Stephen? Stephen Hahn, Stephen, is going to say a couple of words about that and some other things. I want to thank Stephen. The FDA has been incredible. They've been approving not only this, but they've been approving many things at a pace that's never happened before.
Let us try and understand the benefits of these at-home tests. Firstly, they will reduce the stress among the patients. Currently, patients have to travel to hospitals and wait for their turn to be tested. Patients often have to face uncomfortable conditions, which increases their anxiety, as per reports. Secondly, the at-home tests will also utilize a shorter swab to reduce discomfort in the nose. Thirdly, the at-home tests will also reduce the risk faced by the health workers. Medical workers are often exposed to the virus while collecting the samples. At-home tests will reduce this risk. And lastly, the at-home tests will also help America scale up its testing capacity to meet the growing demand.
As part of these efforts to support diagnostic test development during this global pandemic, the President has asked us, and under his leadership, to actually cut down as many barriers as we possibly could to get medical products into the medical community, and we have done that, of course, recognizing the urgency of the situation. I do want to emphasize what the President said, that we are very much paying attention to safety and with respect to test validity and reliability of those tests.
So how exactly can an average American get access to these at-home coronavirus tests? A patient would be able to apply online for the test. If the application is approved, then the test will be mailed to the patient. The patient can then perform a self-swab. mail back the samples and get the results. Each test kit is currently priced around $119.
We've been saying make China pay for more than 2 months now, but it seems countries around the world are finally warming up to the idea now. They're using different approaches. On Sunday, it was Donald Trump's turn. Again, the US president keeps flip-flopping his way through this crisis. First, he slammed China. He called the coronavirus the Chinese virus. Then he forgot about it. Yesterday, he went back to blaming Beijing. The approach was different this time, though. It came out like a warning. The US president spoke of quote-unquote consequences.
Well, if they were knowingly responsible, certainly. If it was a mistake is a mistake. But if they were knowingly responsible, yeah, then there should be consequences. You're talking about, potentially lives like nobody's seen since 1917.
Trump is stepping up his attacks on China. America and China are now going head-to-head. Both countries want to shape the narrative of this outbreak. Trump is holding daily press conferences on this. He declared that he is not happy with China, and he went after the WHO once again.
Put it this way, I'm not happy, okay? I'm not happy. And I spoke to them, and this could have been shut down a long time ago. They knew it. And we couldn't get in, and in all fairness, World Health couldn't get in, and that's why I wish they took a different stance.
He's not happy, he says. Trump is saying everything, in fact. He's questioning China's numbers. He's demanding accountability from China. He's also blaming them for the outbreak. China has issued a response today. Listen to this statement from the Foreign Ministry.
Like other countries, China has also been attacked by the virus and is a victim of the virus. We are not the culprit, nor the accomplice of the virus. In the face of major public health crisis and threats of infectious disease, the international community should stay united rather than blaming each other, rushing to hold someone accountable or demanding compensation. I don't remember there was such an international practice before.
The United States wanted to send investigators to Wuhan. China denied Trump's demand by playing the victim card. The less said about that, the better. But this was the first time, perhaps, that Beijing addressed the demand for reparations. The demand to make China pay is growing. Lawsuits have been filed. We've kept you posted on that front. So why is it that China chose to respond only today? 2 reasons. Weeks ago, we had told you about a lawsuit in Florida. They want billions of dollars from China in damages. Now, the law firm behind it says that thousands have signed up in support. And here's the second reason. A newspaper in Germany went one step further. It has sent a bill to China. It's an itemized invoice worth 149 billion euros. That's $165 billion. The invoice has been drawn up by Bild. That's Germany's largest tabloid newspaper. Let me describe the different charges. 24 billion euros for the tourism industry, more than 7 billion euros for the film industry, 1 million euros an hour for Lufthansa, the German airline, 50 billion euros for Germany's small businesses. That is the breakup. Well, they got no money, but they caught China's attention and were the latest recipients of Chinese criticism. The Chinese embassy in Beijing, in Germany, in fact, wrote a letter to the newspaper. They were unhappy with the critical coverage. Last week, Bild's editor-in-chief had published an open letter. It was addressed directly to Xi Jinping. It says the Chinese president, quote-unquote, rules by surveillance. The criticism against China is growing. The threat of reparations may seem like a long shot, but it's playing now on the mind of the dragon. Donald Trump is in no position to dictate terms, not at home, not abroad, certainly not to India. Hydroxychloroquine. It's an anti-malarial drug. India makes a lot of it. And suddenly the whole world wants it, including US President Donald Trump. Only he doesn't know how to ask properly. So he issues threats. Our cover story tonight is about a president who is disconnected with reality. A president who is failing miserably. A president who was in denial about this pandemic. Things became so bad that a Russian military plane landed in America with medical supplies made by a company that the US had sanctioned. Donald Trump is in no position to dictate terms, not at home, not abroad, certainly not to India. And yet he threatens retaliation if his quote-unquote request is not honored. So tonight, we will tell you why Donald Trump may be single-handedly responsible for America's crisis and how lack of leadership is making a superpower bite the dust. Our story tonight begins with a press conference. A journalist rose to ask the president a question. He wanted to know about India's ban on medicine exports. India had banned the export of medicine, specifically of hydroxychloroquine, a potential, I want to underline that, a potential cure for coronavirus. The journalist wanted to know how President Trump would deal with this ban. Trump replied with a threat.
And I said, we'd appreciate your allowing our supply to come out. If he doesn't allow it to come out, that would be okay. But of course, there may be retaliation. Why wouldn't there be?
A retaliation, that is what the US president is threatening. First, a botched up response, and now such bluster. America has more than 370,000 cases of the coronavirus, the highest in the world. They're failing miserably at controlling the Wuhan virus, and now Donald Trump is looking for a fall guy. The president is blaming everybody but himself. Trump wants to show that he is in control. Unfortunately for him, not many believe this. Donald Trump believes he can force any country to sell him critical supplies. Well, here are some facts that we must all know. The decision to lift India's partial ban, or lift the ban partially on the export of medicines, came before Trump's so-called threat, not after. India, remember, had requests from 30-odd countries for medicines. So India decided to help those in need. That's what any mature country would do. Let me repeat, India's decision came before the president hinted at retaliation, not after. So we should dismiss Trump's comments as his trademark grandstanding. India has decided that neighborhood comes first. It will give medicines to countries that need it most. As for this medicine, hydroxychloroquine, here's the thing. Trump is betting big on it. It is being called the miracle drug, but it is not a proven cure. Scientists will not vouch for it. There is no proven cure for the Wuhan coronavirus. It's all trial and error right now. Hydroxychloroquine has been given to some patients around the world. They've shown positive signs, but doctors are not widely prescribing it because the evidence is limited. Trump's own advisor on this, America's top doctor and researcher on infectious diseases, Anthony Fauci, has called the evidence, quote-unquote, anecdotal. But the president will have none of it. He wants to be seen as finally doing something. So he's buying 100,000 body bags, and he's insisting on a medicine that may or may not work. And this alone should explain why America is in such a mess.